Mads Mikkelsen's name isn't just tied to playing one of the most iconic villains in James Bond history or earning accolades at Cannes. He's also a figure who commands respect, even in the cautious circles of Hollywood. Hard to believe that this same man, once turned down for a student role because he was deemed too rough, would, just 2 decades later, stand shoulder to shoulder with Johnny Depp on the Cannes red carpet. But behind that remarkable journey lies a period when he all but vanished from the headlines. At the peak of his career, Mads Mikkelsen suddenly stepped away from the spotlight. Around that same time, a leaked private video thrust him into a whirlwind of European media scrutiny. It seemed like his career might be over for good. Yet today, he boasts a fortune of more than $15 million and lives a life millions can only dream of. So, what really happened during that time when Mads Mikkelsen chose to disappear, right when his name was on everyone's lips, and why? Was that very silence the key to his rise to the top? Can you imagine it? One of Hollywood's most charismatic leading men grew up in a gritty working-class neighborhood where even dreaming big was a luxury. Mads Dittmann Mikkelsen was born on November 22, 1965, in Osterbro, Copenhagen, but he didn't grow up in the calm, middle-class streets of the city. Mads' childhood was rooted in Nørrebro, a bustling blue-collar district where the streets were dusty and the noise never stopped. His father, Henning, drove a taxi, working late into the night to make ends meet. His mother, Bente Christensen, was a dedicated nurse, often pulling night shifts at the local hospital. In the small apartment where Mads and his brother Lars grew up, everything was shared: the bedroom, the clothes, and even their simple dreams. From the age of 13, Mads started picking up odd jobs to help the family. He did whatever he could, delivering packages, washing dishes, waiting tables in cafes, the kind of hard, familiar work for kids raised in Nørrebro. Through those years, all he could do was keep moving forward. But what set Mads apart was that he found an escape. He spent much of his free time practicing gymnastics and dance, 2 pursuits that weren't exactly common in his rough-and-tumble neighborhood. At times, he faced ridicule, labeled odd just for loving movement and dance. Yet those hours of training built discipline, body control, and a resilient spirit, qualities that would lay the groundwork for a future no one could have predicted. Compared to his brother Lars, who later also became an actor, Mads was the one who dared to dream and act on it. He didn't dream to escape. He dreamed to move forward one slow, deliberate step at a time, out from the shadow of a childhood filled with limitations. And from that cramped apartment in Nørrebro, his journey began. The kid who was once mocked for daring to dance now stood on Sweden's equivalent of a Broadway stage. But just when it seemed his dreams were taking shape, Mads Mikkelsen abruptly quit dancing and vanished. Why would someone with everything: a steady career, undeniable talent, and a bright future, choose to start over from nothing? Mads was once the pride of the Ballet Academien in Gothenburg. He performed in major musicals, from Chicago to La Cage aux Folles. He had a reliable income, a packed performance schedule, and a clear path ahead. But something inside him broke a feeling that his body was still dancing, but his mind had wandered elsewhere. Why did he feel stifled under the stage lights? Without warning, Mads walked away from it all. Friends called it crazy, but he quietly enrolled in the Aarhus Drama School at age 30, surrounded by students nearly a decade younger. He had to start from scratch, learning lines, mastering expressions, refining his voice. One teacher even told him, "You don't look like a star." And truthfully, with his angular features, buzzed hair, and intense stare, he didn't resemble anyone in Hollywood. Once, he auditioned for a student play and was rejected for being too rough. But instead of backing down, he took a chance on a role in Pusher, a low-budget independent crime film from 1996. He played Tunny, a bald, reckless drug dealer steeped in defiance and tragedy. It was an unconventional choice. Was it worth risking his career? Pusher became an unexpected hit. Danish audiences couldn't forget Tunny's wild, haunted eyes, and directors started whispering about the man who could act with silence. That wasn't just a role. It was the first punch Mads threw at the film industry. For those who've ever taken a bold leap to change their path in life, Mads' story is a reminder: starting late doesn't mean starting wrong. What matters is daring to move forward, even when no one's betting on you. And for Mads Mikkelsen, that gamble was the beginning of all the glory that followed. He once delivered dentures to make ends meet, stood washing dishes behind the cramped counter of a cafe in Nørrebro. But 2 decades later, he became the man facing off against James Bond, cold, dangerous, and impossible to look away from. How did a man who entered the industry late, with a rugged look, rise to the top in the cutthroat capital of film? Casino Royale in 2006 marked Mads Mikkelsen's debut to global audiences as Le Chiffre, the main villain opposite James Bond. Not classically handsome. No need for many words, just a steely gaze and a gravelly voice were enough to make him unforgettable. That role changed his life, turning a local name into an international icon. From there, Mads kept making waves. The Hunt in 2012 earned him the Best Actor award at Cannes, Doctor Strange, Rogue One, Fantastic Beasts. Each cemented his place in both European and Hollywood markets. The emotional peak came with Another Round in 2020, a film that won the Oscar for Best International Feature. Mads didn't just act, he lived fully as a teacher grappling with loss, pushing audiences to the edge of their feelings. At 50, when many slow down, Mads Mikkelsen hit the peak of his career. From a man who once delivered packages in Copenhagen's snowy winds, he now boasts a net worth estimated between $14 and $16 million, according to Celebrity Net Worth in 2024. But for him, the true treasures aren't in his bank account. So where does a global star like Mads Mikkelsen live? The answer might surprise you. Mads Mikkelsen has never called Hollywood home. For him, a home doesn't need to be loud, it needs a soul. His main residence is an apartment in Østerbro, a refined neighborhood in the heart of Copenhagen, not far from where he grew up. The building, nearly 100 years old, has a facade lightly touched with pale green moss, a gray stone entryway, and rows of elm trees lined up like handwritten letters from a bygone era. Mads' apartment, about 2,000 square feet, sits on an upper floor with large windows catching the early light, overlooking Fælledparken, the park that was his and his brother's childhood playground. Inside is a world of art and reflection. A sofa upholstered in earthy brown, a glossy black piano by the window, a floor-to-ceiling bookshelf packed with everything from philosophy and film to Nordic novels. The walls don't display blockbuster posters, but abstract paintings by lesser-known Danish artists. The open kitchen, where Mads often cooks with his wife, isn't about extravagance, it's where he returns to being an ordinary husband and father. Then there's another place, a vacation villa in Mallorca, where Mediterranean sunlight seems to slow time itself. Perched on a hillside in Dea, the house is built of handcrafted limestone, surrounded by ancient olive and fig trees. Each morning, Mads wakes early, hikes the slope, brews a black coffee, and sits on the terrace watching the sea shift from gray to blue. A small pool lined with natural stone sits beside an outdoor kitchen with a wood-fired oven, where he grills meat for friends who visit. No supercars parked out front, no automated gates, just silence, sea breeze, and starlit nights, a place humble enough for a man who once waited tables and relearned everything at 30 to truly rest. The combined value of both properties is estimated at $4 to $6 million. But for Mads, their worth can't be measured in money. They're where he slows down, steps away from cameras, and holds on to the part of himself untouched by fame. And perhaps it's that humility, choosing the warm light of a family apartment over red carpet flash, that earns Mads Mikkelsen such respect. Mads Mikkelsen has never chased loud, flashy supercars. What he drives mirrors who he is: calm, steady, and unpretentious. In Copenhagen, he opts for a Volvo XC90 T8 Recharge, a luxurious yet durable hybrid SUV priced around $75,000. With sleek silver gray paint and warm brown leather interiors, it exudes a quiet Nordic elegance. Its air suspension glides smoothly over the city's cobblestone streets, while soundproof glass shuts out the cold wind and honking horns. Locals occasionally spot him parking near an old bakery in Vesterbro, grabbing coffee and cinnamon rolls before slipping away like any other resident. No cameras, no bodyguards. In Mallorca, where he and his family keep their vacation villa, Mads drives a Range Rover Sport HSE Dynamic, worth about $85,000. It's perfect for the dusty, rocky coastal roads. But for Mads, it's also a companion for solitary mornings. He often leaves at dawn, bow and arrows in tow, heading toward the Tramontana Mountains. The trunk always holds a wool blanket, a pocket novel, and a thermos of unsweetened black coffee. The Range Rover isn't glossy, but it's tough enough for any incline just like him. In a rare interview, Mads chuckled when asked about cars I don't know engines. I just need a good car that gets me where I'm going and doesn't draw eyes. A far cry from the Hollywood actors flaunting sports cars or rare classics. For Mads, cars aren't about proving status. They remind him who he is and where he's headed, not just on the road, but in life. Even as a global star, Mads Mikkelsen's lifestyle boils down to two words: simple and disciplined. He wakes early, no alarm, no phone, just a habit from his dancer days. At 6 in the morning, he starts with a hand-brewed black coffee, standing by an open window overlooking his small Copenhagen garden. No personal trainers or complex routines, just a yoga mat, some stretches, and a light workout with resistance bands. For him, staying fit isn't about looking good but keeping the strength for action-heavy roles as he nears 60. After a simple breakfast: dark rye bread, cheese, boiled eggs. Mads spends time reading scripts or books on Nordic mythology and philosophy. He loves morning reading when his mind is clearest. "I don't read to become someone else," he once said, "but to understand myself before stepping into another's skin." Afternoons, if he's not working, he cooks with his wife. No private chef, just the two of them in a bright kitchen. Jazz playing softly, preparing traditional Danish dishes like frikadeller meatballs or pickled herring with potatoes. Mads chops onions, Hannah seasons, and they laugh when their kids wander in, drawn by the aroma filling the house. On free days, he practices archery, a hobby from his Valhalla Rising days. He built a small range behind the Mallorca villa. There, he stands for hours under the sun, not training for a role, but savoring the calm when an arrow leaves his hand and the world goes still. Mads doesn't do parties. He avoids flashbulbs and red carpets unless required. His ideal evening is watching old films with family or strolling Copenhagen's Nyhavn harbor as the city lights up, old coat over his shoulders, hands in pockets, blending into the after-work crowd. He once said, "In this business, I only need one thing to be myself when I leave the set." In Hollywood's noisy world, that might be the greatest luxury of all. Behind Hollywood's glare, Mads Mikkelsen doesn't live like a star, but like a husband, father, and quiet companion. He married Hannah Jacobsen, a Danish dancer and choreographer, in 2000. They met in an arts program in the 1980s, when Mads was still a stage dancer, and their love has carried them through decades of highs and lows. "No fuss, no fanfare," Mads once said. "I don't need to prove my love to the world, I just need her to know." They have 2 children, Carl and Viola, raised in Denmark, far from the entertainment world's chaos. Mads keeps a strict rule: no kids at events, no social media photos, no spotlight disrupting their childhood. When he's not filming, he spends most of his time in Copenhagen, in their apartment overlooking a calm canal. Weekends are for grocery runs with Hannah, biking through the city, walking the dog, or family getaways to Mallorca. He's still the man who tends the garden, fixes leaky faucets, and grills meat in the backyard. What sets Mads apart is his family-first mindset, no matter how packed his schedule. He makes time for his kids' milestones, birthdays, graduations. He once canceled a major interview to attend his daughter's first dance recital. Everyone defines success differently. For Mads, it's not awards or iconic roles. It's coming home each night, opening the door, hearing his wife and kids' laughter, and knowing he's still part of that peaceful world. The spotlight is never the only light on stage. Mads Mikkelsen, the Danish man beloved by audiences worldwide, has also faced moments teetering on the edge of scandal and career. In 2008, while filming Clash of the Titans, Mads was in a serious car accident. Though he escaped with minor injuries, the incident forced him to reflect deeply on the fragility of the career he'd chosen. But the challenges didn't end there. In 2012, during an action scene for the Three Musketeers, he broke a rib and injured his lung, requiring weeks of rest. For a former dancer, being unable to move was harder than the physical pain. Could a body once so vital to his craft still keep up with his will? But the falls weren't just physical. In 2006, a private video involving Mads and his ex-girlfriend, actress Cecilia Thompson, was leaked without his knowledge. The incident quickly became fodder for European tabloids. In an industry unforgiving about personal lives, the scandal shook his reputation, at least back home. In the years that followed, he faced more unwanted controversy. When he took on the role of Hannibal Lecter in the series Hannibal in 2013, some media outlets criticized him for whitewashing a character previously described as having multi-ethnic roots. And in Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets in 2017, his villain role was swept into backlash for allegedly reinforcing racial stereotypes, though Mads himself had no hand in the script's content. Yet, amid all the noise, Mads didn't push back. No defenses, no public statements to clear his name. He simply kept working for him. The best response was letting his characters speak, and indeed, fantastic beasts. The Secrets of Dumbledore in 2022 became a striking comeback. Stepping into the role of Gellert Grindelwald after Johnny Depp, amid global buzz over Depp's legal battles, many were skeptical. But when the film hit theaters, only one thing mattered. Mads had turned a replacement role into a performance for the ages. In Hollywood, not everyone knows how to hold steady through cracks in their armor, but Mads Mikkelsen, with his calm, professionalism, and iron will rose above it all, quietly, but with undeniable presence. Some people become stars because they were born to shine. Mads Mikkelsen became one because he never let his fire go out. At 59, while many of his peers have retreated behind the scenes, Mads keeps working not for fame, not for the spotlight, but for one simple reason: he loves the art of storytelling. From the chilling Le Chiffre in Casino Royale to the broken father in The Hunt, or the sorrowful man in Another Round. Mads doesn't pick easy roles. He chooses roles that say something about humanity. And that's what makes him more than an actor. He's a symbol of perseverance, a model for anyone who's been underestimated, who's had to start over. At 30, he gave up everything to study acting. At 40, he began earning global recognition. And at 50, he boldly took on complex, daring roles, unafraid of public backlash or risks. Even after achieving stardom, Mads has stayed deeply tied to his Danish roots. He supports local film projects, appearing in movies that don't need to be blockbusters but are powerful enough to shift perspectives. Another Round is a prime example. Not only did it win the Oscar for Best International Feature, but it sparked big questions about lifestyle, loneliness, and midlife crises, topics that resonate deeply with audiences over 50. Mads is also deliberate in choosing brand partnerships. He turns down deals meant solely for media buzz, favoring brands with humanistic values like Omega and Bottega Veneta, names that evoke longevity and depth, not fleeting flash. For audiences who've lived long enough to know success is never a straight line, Mads Mikkelsen's story is proof you can start late and still reach your destination, as long as you keep moving forward. And perhaps that perseverance is the most beautiful legacy he leaves, not just on the screen, but in the hearts of those who once carried small dreams, in a place like Norabro.